All right. Now, before I begin my UVs, I did do a little bit of cleanup before I started recording. I got rid of everything in the layers and all the layers as well. I also got rid of all the curves that were in my antenna and inside my belt because I don't need those anymore. And I filled in the empty space at the end of the belt because I forgot about that in my previous recording. And now I'm ready to begin UVs. Couple things to keep in mind. If you have a symmetrical shape like this, it is often easier to only do the UVs from one side and then flip it over to the other side afterwards, which is why I am not going to bother working with the claws or the left foot, and I can simply delete them for now and mirror them over afterwards. Also, a thing to keep in mind, things that you make with the mesh sweep tool are already UV'd, so you don't need to do those again. The only different one is on the belt, the end point down here, and faces, that's new. That's not included the UVs for the rest of the build, so I do have to redo those. But that's really easy to do. I select my faces right here, UV, planar option box, and I always like to set this to best plane, and then keep image width height ratio, hit project. There. Now I'll worry about making these the right scale relative to each other later. But for now, that's good enough. I just want to get things cut up and flattened. I also like to take into consideration at this point, do I want to have all this in the same UV map? These are going to take up a lot of space, and so is this. So it might be a good idea to, say, put all the fabric bits in their own UV layout. So I'll start off by putting that in its own layer. Call that cloth layer. And the rest of this, I'll put that in, say, a body layer. I also, when I bring this into Substance Painter, I will need these to each have their own material, but I'm not going to do that yet. I'm going to do that as I finish the UVs on each object. That way I can say that, well, this object is completed, and then I can move on to the next one. So I'm going to start off by, let's say, turning off the body layer. I'll move on to the cloth next, and I'm just going to select everything except the belt, because I don't want to mess with the belt. I've already finished the belt. UV planar, and I think I'll just point this at the entire shape like that. And that'll throw a quick UV on everything, but this is not completed. If I were to look at my UV editor again, you can see it is just a flat shape. It has been projected into 2D space. And now I can start worrying about laying out each object. Now, this is red. That means it's backwards, but that's okay. I'm going to see what happens if I unfold it real quick just to see. And there we go. I try on my checker pattern, see what that looks like. What I want is for my checkers on my checker pattern to be flat squares. If I see a bunch of weird distortions, that means that my UVs are distorted. And there's a little bit of distortion right here. Not a whole lot. For the most part, it is fairly flat. I may select some edges up here and cut them to make it lay down a little bit flatter. Let's see. UV, 3D cut and sew tool. If I click up here, it cuts those. And I'll reselect my UV shell and unfold that. And these squares are not as distorted as they were a second ago. I do have a seam right here. Hopefully that won't be too obvious, but sometimes you just have a seam. Oh, I forgot. Probably should have deleted the inside of this thing to make my UVs a bit easier to work with. I'm going to slide this so I just have a little bit of a lip around it. And then delete all the stuff inside. There we go. There. Lay this out flat. I'm going to need to have a seam somewhere. I might as well put in the very, very back. My cut and sew. Cut it right there. I can select my shell, unfold that. And if I orient my shells, I can get a straighter layout of that. Check my checkers. They look like they're squares. Good. And as I lay out the UVs, I'm going to assign a new material to these. Like I said before, I want to have these split up into two different materials for Substance Painter. So I'm just going to go ahead, select them both. Since I finished them both, I'll add a blend. Oh, my material attributes, there it is. And I'll name this cloth. It does not need to have colors, but I like to give these colors just to make it obvious that these ones are finished and these ones aren't. Speaking of which, if I select this down here, this one have cut up already, and it's mostly finished. I can just right-click, assign existing, and put my cloth on that one. There we go. And now I can begin working on everything else. Cut and sew, figure out the back. I'll also cut off the bottom. That'll make it easier to lay out. Select my UVs, unfold. What those look like. They don't have to be completely straight. I just need to do that because it makes me happier. There is some distortion, but I'll be honest, I don't think it's going to be particularly noticeable, especially from the front. Sign existing, put my cloth on there. I forgot. I've been doing all this stuff. Make sure I delete history as I go so I don't forget to do it later. Now, the dress. Thing about UVs is that you're always going to have seams, but in real life for clothing, you're also always going to have seams. So it is the perfect place to not worry so much about seams and just try to put them in where they make sense in a real piece of fabric. For instance, the sleeves are usually not attached. And because I've got my world right here, I only have to cut off one sleeve. And now this sleeve is cut off on this side as well. Let's see. Also, I believe, yeah, you're not going to see anything here because that's being covered up by the belts. So I can easily put a seam right there. So that'll cut that piece off. And I'll put the seam back here. And I'll cut the sleeves. Just missed. Down the inside. I also cut this in the front and back along that same line. And if I unfold these, orient and lay out, see what that looks like here, straighten those out. Oh, I forgot to cut up here too. That's why I didn't get separated into two pieces. There, that makes more sense. Re-unfold those. Want to rotate these separately. I have to turn off World X first. Wait, I thought I turned that off. Whatever. And let's check my checkers. Checkers look pretty good. The angles don't matter as long as they are still squarish, and these definitely need some unfolding. Thought I unfolded those already. And it could just be because this is such a large shape up there, it's causing some distortion. Oh wait, that looks fine now. I think I'm getting a mild display glitch. Things aren't updating unless I move my camera. See? That's easy enough to fix. I'm going to save scene as. Go on to the next number. I'm going to change this from modeling to UVs, just so I know what I'm working on when I save it. Alright, that was just a weird little glitch. Happens sometimes. So I can move on to the next part, and hopefully, yeah, it does update now. So I'll move on here. I'm going to start by cutting this down the back. And then each belt I'll cut away from the others. Oops, right down there. Hit right there. Like that. Unfold. Orient. Well, someone's always got to be different. There we go. Plate history. And then I'll assign my cloth. This part right here is pretty much already done. There's not a whole lot to do with it beyond unfolding it to make sure that these little bits right here are not weird. You look right here, it's kind of getting stretched and distorted along those bits. I'm just going to unfold this, and now that should be a bit more natural. All right, cloth and late history. And now I can move on to the body. Now these are already finished because they were made with the sweep mesh tool. But you'll notice this one over here that I mirrored over. That one is red when I look at this. That means it's inside out. It's backwards because when I flipped it over and froze transformations, it is a reverse of this. It's a mirror of this. So I have to reverse my UVs as well. So I'm going to select my shell, go to transform, and find the flip and flip it over. Now they're both blue. And I'm just going to select them both in object mode and assign new favorite. Call that one body. And maybe I'll make this one green. Once again, the color does not actually matter here. And now I can move on to the head. Actually, I want to do everything, so I'm going to select all these parts. UV planar. See, it's now been projected into UV space. If I wanted to, I could adjust this. Rotate this around until it's kind of straight, like this, like the cloth was. But that's not actually important because everything I do now is going to be creating brand new UVs based on that. It just gets rid of any unnecessary seams that are already in it. I'm going to turn off my checker pattern so I can see what I'm doing a bit easier. There we go. And now we'll start cutting this up. So I'll start by cutting off the eyes and the antenna bases. Also want to cut off the little mouthpiece right here. Go all the way around. And I'm going to cut this in the front and back to make that layout a bit easier. And I'll cut off the under part of the head, since that has a different material to it. Pull that up to here. And the neck joints. Also cut down the back. Now there's no way this big round shape up here is going to lay out flat as is. So I'm going to cut it along the back seam right here, up to the top of the head, right around there. And this should lay out flat. I'm going to lay out real quick just so I can get this arranged a bit easier. There we go. Rotate that. There the eyes. Let's see here. I want to make these all kind of match up just for my own sake. There we go. Now we can check the checkers and see if everything is laying out well. A little bit of distortion back here, but the front of the head is looking good. That's what I'm worried about the most. No one's going to see this part here. It's covered up. The eyes are a bit twisted, so I'm going to cut them right here. Yeah, just like these, unfold them. That relaxes that a little bit better. And it's much better. All right. Call the head finished. Assign existing body late history. And move on to the next part. Now let's see. Normally cut the arms. I tend to cut them on the inside where no one's going to see them. But I'm a little bit worried about this little cuff-like thing right here. That's all kind of curled up. A little pinch right there might make unfolding a bit tricky. So I'm going to cut this off and then cut this one right here. That's the only part's going to be cut right in the middle. And the rest of it I'll cut right here. Let's unfold that. I think that should be the bottom. So I'm going to rotate this. Late history. Sign body. I'm just turning this off and on. Turn it on whenever it's convenient. Turn it off when it's convenient. And let's see here. I'll cut this here. Unfold. Check the checkers. Good. You oriented the same direction. There we go. Upper legs. Turn off the checkers. You see, I've got these natural built-in seams where this is going to be part of the shell. This is going to be part of like a soft under material. This is going to be a different part of the shell. So I can cut these along those seams rather than worrying about where else I could cut it. I just use the ones that are already here, save myself some time. These will have to cut right there, otherwise this can't lay out. Cut this little kneecap thing off. Cut these off at the seam between the two shells, like that. And this part I'm just going to cut into front and back. I'll cut it right here, so that's going to be the shortest part for a seam I can make. And then underneath, there. Oh, maybe here, more in the middle. Now, if I unfold these, all right, these shells, lay them out so I can see them a bit better. Check my checkers. Checkers look good. Looks good. Late history. Cut these off right here and here. Now, I'm not sure if I need to chop this up or not. A lot of this is just going to be sort of buried inside the leg or hidden away. Well, I guess it's not really buried inside the leg. But it's not going to be somewhere going to see it too well. Let's see what happens if I unfold this. There's some distortion, but as a part you're never really going to be able to see very clearly. This part here looks good, and that's what matters the most. This part looks good. That's what matters the most. I think I can get away with that. Try to delete history as I go so I don't forget. This is just a tube, so that should be pretty easy. Shall unfold. Looks pretty good. And just like I did for the upper legs, I will cut this along where the natural seams are. And then figure out what to do afterwards. That off. Should be unfolded as one big piece. Cut this off. Also cut off this, oops, little bit right here. Split down the back. And this, I'll just cut all the way down the back like that. Same thing for here. Got little prongs at the top, that'll be fine. See how this unfolds. Where's the top and bottom of this? I generally do not know. That's the top. There. Check my checkers. Oh, this is supposed to be cut off. That's why it looks weird. Didn't cut off all the way. Yep, down here. There we go. That's more like what I'm looking for. Checkers look good. This piece, I think I'll just cut in half and fold the two different parts. Well, that good enough for that one. Now, these toes are all made from the same geometry, so I might be able to do is just do one of these and then copy that onto all the others. Oops, let me make sure I do that so I don't forget I have in fact done that one. So let's see what happens. I'll start by chopping off the bits that I would want to separate out. And I'll cut down the middle and the bottom and see how that unfolds. Looks good. And watch this. If I select this and then shift select that, I can go to Mesh Transfer Attributes. I'm going to transfer the UV sets based on topology or component. We'll see which one works better. And there we go. This one now has the exact same appearance is this. It is, however, a different, scale, and I probably squished a little bit. So I'm going to unfold these pieces again. Make sure it is the proper aspect ratio. And because these are the same, object mode, I can then mesh transfer attributes to this one. And look at that. Late history. Or if these are the same or not. Let's just see real quick. Nope, they're not. So that doesn't work. I probably add some more edge loops in there somewhere. That's fine. I'll just do the exact same steps. Cut. Unfold. See if I can transfer that onto one of these. Yep, but it is distorted, so I have to unfold it so it matches that better. There we go. Mesh. Transfer attributes. Yep. For some reason, these got flipped. I'm just going to rotate them around so they match up better. And I'll move on to this one. Can I get away with it? Let's find out. No, I can't. No harm in trying. Mesh. Transfer. Oh, you can see what happened right here. This got cut on the wrong spot. These ones here have all been working out pretty well, I think. Wait, where's your cut? Nope, that looks about right. Okay. But for some reason, when I did this one, the cut was over here. That's because it doesn't actually know which of these edge loops is the same as this one down there. It's just guessing. But if I were to use component instead, every vertex has a vertex number associated with it. So if these are just copies of each other, they should have the same arrangement of vertex numbers. So now if I apply it, you can see it matches up perfectly. Before we do anything else, I want to unfold this one. I didn't have much to change. I'll go from here to here, mesh, transfer attributes, and now that one should match up because they've got the same component numbers. Stop that. And then the little claw at the end. I'll do that temporarily just to stop this. I'll cut this all the way to the tip. See what happens if I unfold that. The UV checkers they look pretty good. All right. Mesh, transfer, unfold again. Mesh, transfer, late history. Why would I keep doing that? And there we go. Now I'll move on to the hand, or the nearest she gets to a hand. Start by cutting off these little interior bits. I can cut here and here. And that should let this lay out flat. There we go. Said body. There. Finger. You know what? No one's ever going to see these faces here. I'm just going to delete them. No point in including those in my UVs. Cut these off at the joints. Don't want to do that. So maybe I'll start by cutting right here. Just to, no? For some reason it is cutting all the way around. Shouldn't be. Well, I'll just cut it manually. Cut all the way down. I don't want to split this into pieces. I just want to have it split down one side. Now, I may want to cut this piece off here to make this unfold a bit easier because of this little pinch right there. Let's see how this does. Hold. Check my checkers. You can see I'm getting a bit of a distortion right here. That would have happened here if I hadn't cut that off. So I may just chop this bit off as well. That's still really messed up right here. May just be because it's such a bulbous shape, but I think I've got most of that flattened. Happens when you use optimize a bunch of times. I want to try avoid distortions and parts that people are probably going to look at, and people tend to look at faces and hands. So I want to avoid distortions in the hands as much as possible. So I may have to do is to cut this into two pieces, top and bottom, at the thickest part, unfold those. And I'll just select a couple of faces here and stitch those together, just so that they are still attached in some way. Probably get away with that. I'd rather have a seam than a distortion. A seam you can paint around. Distortion, not so much. Make history and assign my body material to that. Last bit of UVs. Start off by cutting along the natural seams. All the way down to here. And some more natural seams. And I'm going to cut off the spikes as well, because that's never going to lay out flat with these in there. And I think these would be better off just chopping in half. Don't want to cut that all the way in half, so I'm going to try doing this again. This I want to cut right there. No? Oh, this doesn't go all the way around. That's right. This part is on top. So I can just leave that as it is. None of these are looping anymore. Good. Unfold. Check my checkers. They look good. And now for all the bits that I want to mirror across the other side, I'm just going to select all those objects. I'm going to duplicate them, Control D, put them in a group with Control G. Because the group is centered in the middle of my scene, I can just flip my group by throwing a -1 in my scale, X, and now they're over here. I don't want to leave them in that group though. I'm going to reselect them. I'm going to remove them from the group with Shift P, and then modify freeze transformations. But you'll notice they're all red now. That means they're backwards, just like the antenna was. So I'll select everything and flip them. So they're blue now. And now I've built the entire body. But just like with the cloth, these are still just in there. They're just cut up. They're not laid out in a way that makes sense. So I'll go back to the cloth to start off with. I'm going to use layout. Now I've already got my layout set up the way I like it. If you don't know how to do that, I'll show you. I'll go to modify and find my layout option box. And I have this set up, optimized for a 4K map with a shell padding of 16 pixels between each shell and 8 pixels tile padding between this shell and the outside of the 0 to 1 space. It's the 0 to 1 space. Anything outside of that will not be functioning properly when I bring this into Substance Painter. So, but I also don't want anything to touch the edges. I don't want, this is touching the edge right here. I don't want anything touching the edges. I don't want anything touching each other. I don't want anything overlapping anything else. So by using the layout with these settings, 16 and 8, hit apply, automatically lays everything out into this space. Now, you'll notice I've got a huge empty space right here. Don't particularly like that. So I'm going to grab the fabric bit right there and rotate that sideways, and hopefully it will fit into the space better now. And there we go. Yes, there's still some empty space, but there's nowhere near as much as there had been, which means there's not going to be wasting as many pixels. Also, nothing is touching the edge. Nothing is touching each other. Everything is laid out. I could go through this and personalize a little bit. I could group things up that are the same parts of the same objects. I could group up everything that is for, top right here, put all that together. I could group everything up with these belts right there. I'm not going to worry about that. If I was doing this, if I was painting this by hand in Photoshop, that would matter more to me. I'm going to be painting this in Substance Painter. Substance Painter doesn't care where these things are. So I'm good enough with that as is. Another thing I like to check, it's under Transform again. I like to check the texel density. Texel density is how dense the pixels are in 3D space. So I tell it to get, for a 4K map, these are 12.6 pixel density, pixels per square inch or whatever it is, per square centimeter, I think is the base setting for this. And when I do the body, I want to make sure that these aren't like extremely different. If this is 12 and the other one's 2, that might be a bit of an issue. Or if this is 12, the other one's 1200, that might be a bit of an issue. We'll see what it looks like once I do the other one. It's probably be different because I think there's actually more stuff going on here. Just like that. I've already got the layout sorted, so I can just tell it to apply that. And there it is. There's everything jammed together into my UV space. Texel density, 16. 12 and 16 I can live with. That's good enough. And once again, everything is laid out without too much empty space. There is always going to be some. Can't help that, but as long as it isn't like 50% nothing, you're good enough. Look at that. All the little spiky bits. All these random little bits. If I was doing this by hand, I would hate myself for leaving all these little pieces floating around there like that, but I'm using Substance Painter, which will be the next video. And that's it for today.